we are so excited to have our guest, Efren Delgado.
Woo!
He is here with us today. 25 years in kind of the protecting business, which he's going to tell us all about.
Protecting business,
I know, right?
protecting people.
Yes, protecting people. Well, there's probably some other protection too. So
yes.
So it'll be interesting. He's also the author of The Opposite is True. He's got a whole goal for life as he moves forward from private or executive security to being a world-renowned author and maybe speaker if we can convince him to do that. So.
And he also worked for the FBI.
He worked for 15 years. So, welcome, Efren. Hi, yay.
Thank you. We made it happen. Good to see you.
Yes, that's right. It took us a little while.
We're here.
That's
Schedules
right.
are busy.
Schedules are crazy.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about your background, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about your book after that.
Yeah. So my main kind of theme in life, everybody has a purpose. It's changed in subtle ways. The tree trunk and the roots have been the same, but the leaves have changed a little bit. And it's essentially protecting people. I've been drawn to protect people since I've tasted what it's like to not be protected as a little kid in a bully scenario. Not a huge dramatic experience with bullying, but to a little kid, a little bit of bullying could be intense. So I asked the question, why would somebody be mean when they could simply be nice? And that's really the question of psychology. Why do people do what they do? And specifically criminology. Why do bad people do what they do? So I'm about protecting people. I've done it in the FBI's National Security Division, spies, terrorists, in the criminal division, criminals, and then currently in the private sector, protecting people from threats or other potential hazards or active shooters, that sort of thing.
Wow.
And now I'm writing.
No big deal.
No big deal. I'll just write books.
I'll
just write books. It's whatever. It's fine. It's whatever.
All the lessons I've learned, I just want everybody to know about it, because it's, even though they're simple ideas, they're not easy to live out, but we could get into that.
Yeah, say more about that. So the title of your book is The Opposite is True. Right. Tell us kind of what was the impetus for writing it, and then tell us a little bit about what we could expect if we read it.
So I've always been an ally of the good guys, the quote unquote good guys. None of us are perfect, like we kind of mentioned before. We're all mortal. We all have flaws, failures, that sort of thing. But I contend that adversity is the catalyst of purpose, action, and success. So all of our scars, all of our traumas, all of our difficulties, that's how we grow. Humility is the only path to wisdom. So when we're humbled, that's when we have the opportunity to grow. But many times we ignore those things. So we deprive ourselves of that growth. But like tearing a muscle for increased strength, you have to kind of embrace the obstacles of life to really grow from that. And that's just embracing humility, which is hard to do because nobody likes to be humbled, including myself. So I contend in the book that life is going to humble you no matter what. You get in a car accident, break a femur bone, a collarbone, or you get a divorce or lose a job or whatever. Life is going to humble you because we are mortal. We are imperfect. But if you're proactive about it, by embracing humility, and this is what I contend in the book, acknowledging a higher power, exercise in gratitude, serving others in any way, from as little bit as saying thank you, that's a form of service, to volunteering around the world to help villages, whatever the degree is, if you're thinking about others, you'll find meaning. And I think that's the secret to happiness. Seeking happiness, ironically, will keep you away from it. You're chasing your tail, chasing the wind. But if you seek serving others, you'll find meaning and stumble upon happiness. And I give those examples throughout the book of how all these legends in our lifetime, from like Abraham Lincoln, Marcus Aurelius, Elon Musk, like so many different amazing people in the planet. One of my friends was a child soldier in South Sudan, so I use him as an example. So all those different traumas that they went through, when the reader reads about it and it's just their jaws drop, and then you see on the other side what they made of their lives, you see how these examples really grew from all those ripped up scars that they had to heal from. And so I use extreme examples for two reasons: to educate the reader. Extremes are easy to understand versus just kind of benign examples. And secondly, to inspire the reader that they could do it too. So, all the traumas and difficulties we've all had in our lives to whatever degree, we should embrace them so we grow from them and either not repeat them or grow from them and help others in those situations. And then we find fulfillment, you find your purpose, and you find, ironically, happiness.
That's great.
That
Well,
is awesome.
so Efren, help me understand you're coming to the end of your FBI career. You start in executive protection, executive security, and then you have this idea for a book. Now, if you're anything like me, it took me. You mentioned that you're working on a fiction or on a novel.
Right.
It took me 10 years to write a novel. It took a long time. It took a lot less time to write our first business book. A lot less time to write our second business book after that. You just get that muscle gets better. So you're sitting down and you're like, hey, I'm going to write my first book. How long ago was that? And what was the catalyst for going, you know what, I've got something to say. Let me say it.
Great question.
Yeah, that is a good question. It was after the FBI, because during the FBI, I had zero time to do anything. And so when I was in the private sector, I think a few years, I settled down, I'm guessing like 2018, 2019, and started writing the bones of the book. And the idea was that I've recognized so many patterns in human behavior all my life, literally from childhood, from that first bullying experience, all the way to after the FBI in the private sector now, working with different bodyguards and clients and that sort of thing. And it really illustrates how humans have been human since the beginning of time. Like, what makes us human are our vulnerabilities, our mortality. What separates us is free will. Some people, the way they manage their difficult experiences is going inward, rejecting the world, blaming everybody, giving up, depression, that sort of thing. They just get in the fetal position and throw in the towel. Other people choose to grow from it. And they, just like humility is the only path to wisdom, they actually get wiser from those experiences. And then they empathize with others because they know what they've experienced. They self-reflect and then they understand other people. That's what true empathy is. So they start serving others, and those are the happy people. The reason I titled the book The Opposite is True, you'll notice that the kindest, sweetest, most generous people in the world are also the most competent. So that's not by chance, but it's counterintuitive. People think if somebody's really sweet and kind, oh, they're probably weak. They're a little bunny rabbit. The opposite is true. On the other hand, why do you think Chihuahuas start barking at the doorbell every time it rings? Is it because they're strong and brave? No, they're very weak. So that's one of the classic examples I always go to, because everybody could picture that little dog yapping at the doorbell. So bullies,
yes, we'll
criminals.
hope that our little dog doesn't do the same while we're having our interview.
Yeah, we have one.
Mine
of those.
certainly will. So we could all relate to that. And again, it's a question of degree, whether it's a not so nice relative criticizing the dry turkey on Thanksgiving, or it's whether it's a tyrant like Hitler or Kim Jong-un or whatever, oppressing people, starving them to death, torturing them, that sort of thing. So the extremes they always illustrate, but context and continuum always matter in whatever you're talking about. So I use both examples so that the reader could relate to what I'm saying. And then I use extreme examples in history just so that they could see how people have overcome vast adversity and accomplished a lot of good from it, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So, question for you. I'm sure reading your book would give some insight into this. I'm kind of thinking about like an immediate little nugget of wisdom that we could give to people. How do you become more humble? How do you find more humility? What would be your advice for someone who, is seeking that?
Yeah, that's good. And it's a very useful tool. So Greg Laurie, a pastor out here, says fruit grows in valleys and not on mountaintops. So I'll grab that huge, beautiful metaphor, and then I kind of add to it. So I alluded to your purpose, my purpose. Everybody has a purpose in life, even if it might evolve a little bit. That purpose requires work, requires effort, requires deliberate action. So just like climbing a mountain, you can't just passively put your hands behind your head and say, I'll get there eventually. So you have to climb. And when you climb, you will eventually slip and fall. So when you slip and fall in life while you're pursuing your purpose, the summit of the mountain, I suggest to embrace being humbled, because fruit grows in valleys and not on mountaintops. So the roses, the flowers, the fruit, that's growing where all the water is, on the bottom of the mountain. So while you're there all skinned up, dust yourself off, recognize all the beautiful nutrients of wisdom all around you. Pick those flowers, save some for your wife, stuff your pockets with all the apples and that fruit of wisdom, nourish yourself, and climb back up, now with a wiser trajectory. And those bits of wisdom could be, this person I've known for 40 years has been acting like a friend and an ally. In reality, to be honest with myself, this difficult truth I'm going to no longer deny. They're not healthy for me. I'm putting up a boundary. On the other hand, the coworker, friend, relative, whatever, that's been always in my corner that I've kind of taken for granted because they're just always supportive, appreciate that. They earned your trust. So start to be selective with who you're trusting, who you're spending your time with, all of those things. So you pick your wolf back wisely. And then sometimes you have to just be an eagle and fly alone. Just all those difficult realities. Maybe a parent isn't your ally, even though you'd really like that to be the case, or a spouse or a child or whatever. So our emotional needs to want a great father or mother, or want a great spouse, or want a great best friend, they may not be those things. And those are difficult realities. So instead of denying it, one of the most difficult things is, I just suggest, be objective, dispassionate, honest with yourself, self-reflect, and live in reality so that you could, reach your summit more successfully, more efficiently.
I love that. Actually, that metaphor reminded me of something I've seen, like in a meme, and it's a beautiful forest, with a floor of leaves and moss and whatnot. And I won't say the phrase correctly. It's something like, whenever I fall down, I take it as kind of the universe's way of saying to me, there's something down there that I need to see. And, right. And I need to spend time with. And I very much share your same concept of, the things that happen to us that might not be perfect. In fact, that's, you learn in the growth of the failure and the not so pretty and not so good, the ick, is so true. Right. I had a car accident. I had a head-on collision where a gentleman hit me. And I can remember we met with some friends, we were having a happy hour, and the woman said to me, someday you're going to look back on this accident and you're going to see the gift that it was. And I remember thinking at the time, like, shut up. Like, that's a horrible thing to say to me. And of course, I was still very much in the trauma of the whole experience. Still concussed. Still concussed, still very much recovering. And the truth is, I'm here now on the other side of it, and I can tell you she's absolutely right. Yeah. I don't look back and say, oh, I'm so glad it happened to me. I definitely look back and say, look what I learned and look where I am now because of what I experienced with that. So I love that.
Now you have gratitude and appreciation for things that might have been just taken for granted, which is a human
100%.
thing.
Yes, 100%.
Efren, I'm curious to know how this applies to you shared with us that you have a 5-year-old, a great age, right? It's great to have children, and especially at that age, they're just filled with so much wonder, and that they're kind of seeing the world with fresh and new eyes. How much does this approach that you have with the opposite is true, kind of how this embracing of humility as a parent, are you applying those same kind of rules? What are you seeing there?
Well, what's great is I think I'm a flawed Christian is the phrasing I always use. So I acknowledge Jesus Christ as God, but just acknowledging a higher power, I think, is already getting you on the right proactive step to being humble. Just acknowledging that. And a couple other proactive ways. I meant to finish your prior question with not just the worst case scenario of being humbled, but you could proactively humble yourself and avoid a lot of those difficult life examples, like a car accident or divorce or losing a job or whatever, by acknowledging a higher power, exercising gratitude, and serving others. You get out of your own head and you find meaning. So I think God gives us these different opportunities, even when we're stubborn. And I'm a stubborn, prideful person, just like anybody, probably worse. But he gives us the opportunities when we have kids to suddenly love something more than ourselves. And I think that's the definition of love, by the way. Love is sacrificial and selfless, which exemplifies humility. You're being humbled. So just by having Colt, my 5-year-old, I'm humbled because I care about him more than myself by far. So any little hurt feeling, any little life lesson that's good for him, but watching him skin his knee and his eyes water makes me want to, no, just let me skin my knee. Take it from him and give it to me immediately. Yes. But that makes you really appreciate life and opportunities, that sort of thing. Yeah. The other thing I'll go into in the book to answer that question is we also age. So when everything's honky-dory, it's hard to be humble. And that's why young adults who are beautiful and healthy and almost never can get hurt seriously, it's hard to be humble. But then when you start to push up to your 40s, suddenly your back starts to hurt and your knees don't work so well and you don't get over colds so easily. Those are the first steps into being humbled by God, by starting to age. So I think the Bible says something like it's a gift to have gray hair because it's a sign of wisdom. Something like
Love
that.
It. Yes. Totally Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no,
exactly. I'm thinking myself.
I really like that. It's a gift. It's a gift. It's a gift.
Those of us that are pushing up into our mid 50s, that's definitely the case.
Yeah, and it's not a chronology thing. It's not because you reach a certain time. It's because you're starting to embrace being humbled. Many people are stubborn until the day they die, and they never find it because they just double down on pride. The illusion is, and this might be really useful for your audience, the illusion is self-preservation will preserve you from difficulties, when ironically it makes it worse. When you're a turtle and you're always in your shell, you'll literally make no progress because you don't stick your neck out and risk it getting cut off. Risk them is living.
That's right.
If you don't risk, you'll exist and you won't live.
That's so true.
And I contend that living is worth dying for because you only live once, so you might as well go for it.
Yes. Leave it all out on the field.
That's right.
100%.
That's right.
In fact, I love that whole concept of, first of all, I love that your faith is such a strong piece of who you are. And I'm also a really big fan of you have to have a higher power or believe in something bigger than yourself, whatever that is for you. It's difficult for me sometimes to, I guess, forget that in our living, what you said about aging is directly related to the pride piece. And I say that because I have been talking a lot with my mother, who is in her mid 70s, and I can see her really, really struggling with the aging piece from very much from a prideful perspective. And she knows it. She knows it. She's admitted it. She's like, I recognize this in myself, that I'm focusing on what I'm losing instead of what I have and what I've gained and what is yet to come. One of the things that I always try to kind of keep in mind, I love getting older because, I don't love my back hurts, my this, my that. That I don't know. What I do, though, is think about what that means. And that means I'm getting older, which means I'm wiser. And I love more deeply.
You're choosing to be wiser.
I am.
Because you're picking up that fruits of wisdom. You're picking up 100%. Those flowers. Other people will reject them or even pour gasoline on them.
Yes. Right. I get it. I want to be my age because of what I know now that I didn't know then, and who I've met and the experiences that I've had. What is making you really happy right now in your life? Just inspiring you and bringing great joy to you?
Well, honestly, the first thing that popped in my head is my kid. Just watching him be a good person and to learn some of the basic hacks in life, like gratitude, saying thank you, and just seeing that, what is, there's a saying I say every Thanksgiving, takers often eat better and givers always sleep better. And so
Oh,
I've seen that exemplified in just being a little kid. Like when he's thankful, he's just glowing and happy.
Mm-hmm.
And then when he's kind of greedy, he's miserable.
yeah.
So he's learning those lessons and taking things. He's starting to do it on his own, which is what's impressive.
Mm.
I'm not just following orders, but actually thinking for himself and
Oh, that's
being
so cool.
courteous. And we were on a random family trip, and he had a couple index cards, and he wrote, "I love you, mommy," and gave it to her, and "I love you, daddy." I
Oh,
still have it in my car, and this was in
Oh.
February. I just keep it in my car, and that came from him. And I think that's the go-to cliche thing, but it's true.
yeah.
And then I guess the second would be conversations like this, where these counterintuitive concepts that I'm bringing up, as soon as I say it, it clicks because people know it. They just often don't think on those terms.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. You tear muscle for increased strength, and adversity is a catalyst for purpose, action, and success. Like they connect the two.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a few more counterintuitive nuggets that I think would help your audience, but where they'll be, oh yeah, that makes
Bring it.
total sense.
Yeah.
Bring it, bring it, bring it.
Another good one that I think is huge is emotion and logic never mix. So I call it oil and water.
Mm-hmm.
Emotion is like oil. It's like fuel. It's slippery. It's messy, and it's necessary for action. It's fuel. But logic is like water, where it's cleansing. It's makes everything clear. It is clear, but people always confuse the two. And the best example that everybody could relate to, possibly Bruce and Gail too, is when you're in a charged argument. Do you see each other's points of view? Or maybe after you both calm down, you're like, okay, maybe she had a point. Maybe he's gotten some points there. So it's after the clouds clear and the rain goes away and the sun comes out that you kind of see the whole landscape clearer before it was all messy. So I'm definitely guilty of being a very passionate human. Emotion takes over a lot of times, but it's not logical. So one of the best metaphors I just think for your audience to take away is like a military tank. Emotion is that powerful gun on top of the tank. You could blast it and destroy all kinds of things if it's not pointed in the right direction. So the thinking part, the assessment part, is being dispassionate and deciding where you want to point it. And then you pull the trigger and you blast your way to your summit, to your future, to your meaning in life, to what matters. So blasting without pointing, without thinking, will get you in all kinds of trouble for society and for yourself. So that's just emoting. But you need that energy. I mean, we're all passionate, Gail.
This never happens at all.
I don't know what you're talking about.
This is it's something that really is we're completely foreign to us, Efren.
Well, I don't know what
This
you're
is all
talking
brand
about.
new.
That's right.
So I mean, whether it's
I love that. First of all, I love that metaphor. I love the concept of that. And we laugh a lot because we've been married 29 years. And one of the things we talk about a lot, we make a joke of it now when we get into conflict. Most of the time, we're able to say something like, hey, listen, don't forget on page, 232 of How to Be Married to Gail Montgomery, it clearly states
you should have known better.
That A, B, and C. And then, we make a joke about that because the truth is, we are flawed and we have to remember that. And I'm going to remember that, I think, the next time that I have some kind of emotional response to something, because self-awareness and that ability to self-manage is so powerful, such a powerful gift to
and it applies to business too. You could 100%. Want to do a deal and the emotions start to kick in because the return on investment could be so tempting and delicious. You're like, okay, I'll overlook that red flag. I'll pretend I don't see that other red flag.
Yeah.
And then you go and get into trouble. And another scenario where it's not just as benign as like getting along with your significant other or having business investments, but in military or law enforcement, if you deny reality in those contexts, you or somebody else could get killed.
Yeah.
And so from a law enforcement point of view, right. So from a law enforcement point of view, lethal force is a great example where that's where I came up with my mantra that I reiterate in the book: assess, adapt, and overcome. So assess is first. That's the thinking part. Adapt to whatever the scenario is and choose before you get in that scenario to overcome it. You're already planning to win or to survive.
Yeah.
So I'll give away one example that we had during our training academy on lethal force. And we had a scenario where we were going to serve a warrant to a fictitious person pretending they work in an office. And we had to serve them a warrant. And when we walk into the office, curveball, this is Hogan's Alley. If you ever saw Silence of the Lambs, you saw glimpses of Hogan's Alley at the FBI Academy.
Okay.
So we walk into this pretend office and a guy's got a gun to his own head. Okay, that's a curveball. We're just going to serve a warrant. What do you think the correct thing to do in that context is? Just informally, no consequences. What would you guys do in that scenario?
Wow, that is a great question. So, wow.
So I won't hold your feet to the fire.
Yeah.
I would
hold your feet to the fire.
I probably right away would, well, in an assessment, I'm looking at that person. It appears to me that they're
a threat to themselves.
Yeah. So probably something that's distracting.
I think I'd start a conversation. I'd start a conversation. Not ask them yet to put down the gun, but more to just say what's going on.
I would empathize.
Right.
Acknowledge, validate, stay open and curious.
Yeah, that sort of thing. And obviously this is Monday morning quarterbacking, but no scenario is the same. So generally speaking, action is faster than reaction. So the correct answer from here would be, ironically, shooting the person because they go from here to here. And suddenly your wife's a widow, your husband's a widow, whatever the scenario. So we were all like you guys, good guys, right? You want to help this person we feel empathy for. Look, they're suicidal. But no, you have to protect yourself, your team, and society, because this does happen. And it's stuff that laymen, including myself, weren't aware of that's a thing. So non-law enforcement people don't really appreciate what cops and FBI agents and military people have to go through, because frankly, we don't want to think about those ugly truths, nor do we have to in most scenarios.
Sure.
Yeah.
So it's just a little bit of a nugget. So people should appreciate those difficult decisions that cops, FBI agents, other federal agents, and military people have to deal with.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to help people and they get hurt along the way.
Yeah.
So, not obvious.
This is great. So Efren, as we're kind of coming down to the latter part of our conversation, we always like to ask the question. I mean, you've had a very varied career, right?
Yeah.
From being in various different parts of the FBI to now being in executive protection and now moving on to be, world-class successful author. What's the
and surfer,
right? And surfer. Yeah. What's the best piece of advice that you've ever received or ever been given? And it can be personal, it can be professional. Just one of those things that kind of landed in your brain, and you went, "Wow, I really have to remember this," or I often go back to this to remind myself how I should move forward.
Yeah, I love that question because it helps everybody, and I think every minute that passes is another chance to do a 180, turn it all around. So people are often so hard on themselves and other people, but particularly on themselves with mistakes they've made, times they've been selfish, times they've blatantly rebelled and been dark. And you could simply choose to forgive yourself or forgive somebody else and flip it all around and live a whole other trajectory on life. You could choose whatever life you want. That's the beauty of free will. It's not too late to turn that ship around. You just have to go slowly and turn it around, go in the opposite direction, and you're fine. And nobody can judge that. So that would be probably the best lesson for everybody, myself and too.
I love that. Great. I love that. Every moment is a new beginning.
That's right.
It's free will.
Love that so much. I want to thank you for your time and your wisdom, your gifts of stories and experiences.
Metaphors.
Yes, we're so honored. What's that?
A lot of metaphors, yeah.
I like those though. We are storytellers, and I'm a very visual learner, and I'm someone who likes to kind of envision things too, and that's just how things get kind of solidified in my person. Yeah. So I very much value that, actually. So thank you for spending time with us and for just the gift of you.
That's right.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. You guys are great.
Awesome. Well, we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Efren.
Thanks.
On that.
All right. Thanks, Efren. Awesome. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. I'm going to leave it open. Thanks, guys.
Yes, just the tab. Perfect.
Okay.